I'd kind of already started getting this like mini series going with like the brewer always available. So I was like, oh, so I'm glad that you're able to make it. And Bob, I hope you have something to add, because now you're like the third screen of just like, I also like day drinking.
I will do my best.
This year's sixth beer of Christmas is 14 from Surly Brewing Company. An epic anniversary beer, this cocktail-inspired barley/wheat wine has seen the insides of some very rare and unique barrels. I sit down for some day drinking with Surly head brewer Ben Smith and my homie and Surly IT guru Bod Sodman to taste 14 and to visit with the ghost of Surly anniversary beer past, present, and future. The 12 Beers of Christmas is brought to you with ongoing support from BSG Handcraft, Imperial Yeast, and the Patreon supporters of Chop and Brew. Join them at patreon.com/chopandbrew.
So on the sixth beer of Christmas, my brew love gave to me, Surly Brewing Company 14, which is 14th anniversary. I'm joined by Bob. Y'all know Bob. Bob actually works at Surly.
I do.
And we're joined by Bob's coworker, brewer Ben Smith. That's awesome. Thanks for joining us, Ben.
Thanks for having me.
It's not much for me to like see Bob, but it means a lot for me to have you here.
Oh, it's fun. It's either this or putting together the exercise bike I bought, so I'm gonna do this instead.
Oh no, cardio starts now.
Better late than never.
and for the event, I broke out my old tour crew shirt, which was worn maybe once or twice because I left the crew dishonorably discharged shortly after they bought these. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about this beer, 14. When I first emailed you, Ben, to tell us about it, it was a really awesome story. So I was excited to have you here. Tell us. It all started with a barrel, right?
Yeah, so folks are probably aware of Heaven Hill Distillery. Some folks aren't aware of one of their special releases. They do a Parker Heritage release once a year. Every year it's a different whiskey. And we had the opportunity to get 100% of the 2020 release barrel. So it's a wheat whiskey aged in a heavy char oak barrel for, I believe it was 12 years. So kind of a unique barrel. Definitely unique liquid, hard to find liquid. I think the bottles of that on the secondary market go for, four figures. I've never even tried one myself. Hopefully someday. I think Lemke's got a stash in his basement, maybe. So we had the opportunity to use those barrels. At that time, we were kind of throwing around a bunch of ideas for what our 14th anniversary beer was going to be. We had never done a barley wine in package for market. We've done a couple of things for beer all and one-off stuff in draft, but never in a package. So we kind of started there. And then once we got these barrels, kind of narrowed in on what that would look like. And, being Surly, we never want to do things exactly how they're supposed to be done. So it is a barley wine, but it's not your traditional barley wine recipe. When I was kind of thinking about it, we had the wheat whiskey in these barrels, so I wanted to incorporate some wheat into the malt bill. So we used a very decent, hefty amount of Byerman wheat malt. And kind of the completely other side of the thought process and inspiration came from cocktails. The last couple of years, I've been very interested in kind of reading about the history of cocktails, the history of specific spirits, and getting involved in some historical cocktail recipes. So I found a recipe for a cocktail called a hanky panky, which is a riff off Manhattan and a little bit of a martini. So it's gin, sweet vermouth, and finished with an Amaro, hopefully a Fernet. And I'm a big fan of Fernet. I think you guys probably had an opportunity to try the Fernet Aged Darkness, which is still one of my favorite darkness variants we've done. Most Fernet actually isn't barrel aged. So I was kind of thinking about a way to do that, but luckily our friends at Tattersall barrel aged their Fernet. So I knew I could get a couple of those barrels, and I kind of thought about the final beer using the barrels as an ingredient in kind of the concept, and came up with a blend of different barrel aged barley wine that kind of kind of, I don't know, create the complexity of a cocktail like a hanky panky. So to do that, we used, obviously all the wheat whiskey bourbon barrels, the base barley wine, and then incorporated some of what we call orphan barrels from Tattersall. So we had a couple rum barrels and a couple Fernet barrels. So we filled the barrels, kind of put it to rest, and then came back to it, 6-7 months in, kind of tasted them. Did some tabletop blending with different amounts of the base beer and the wheat whiskey, and then a little bit of the Fernet, and a little bit of the rum barrels. And the idea was to get kind of the rum would be more of your sweet vermouth kind of flavor. Obviously, the Fernet is going to give you that herbal kind of bitters. And then your base beer is kind of like your base spirit. That's going to be the main thing you're using in the cocktail, but you use these other two elements to kind of give it more complexity and a little bit more flavor. So kind of the other thing we did then, going back to the original malt bill, was I took most of the crystal malt out. I knew we'd get that sweetness from the rum barrels. And I also personally just really don't like how crystal malt ages in beer. I find that dark kind of raisin sherry flavor getting kind of over the top for me. So a lot of traditional English barley wines, after a few years, to me, it's just, I find them hard to drink more than a few sips of. So I really wanted to avoid that oxidation effect on the beer and have this beer kind of stand up longer. And I think the rum barrel gives you kind of that molasses sweetness, as well as a little bit of heat from the booze in there too, without kind of overpowering the base beer and the base barrel. So that was a really long-winded kind of question, but that's kind of the genesis of it. It's kind of taking two different inspirations and bringing them together to make this beer. So it's definitely complex. It's definitely not a traditional barley wine by any means, but I think it's great. Beer, it's really drinkable. It's dry. The base beer finished out fairly well, so you can drink a whole 16-ounce can of this without being too overwhelmed or having too much palate fatigue or just too much sweetness.
Yeah, we should point out it's coming in this awesome. It's not screen print. What do they call that? I'm blanking on it.
It's like a gold foil embossed kind of box from our friends at Studio on Fire. So yeah, really cool. You've seen some of our other releases in these boxes lately. So
did the beer end up like you like? Do you feel like you check all these kind of boxes of the cocktail?
Definitely, yeah. I think it's, it is as advertised. It's a barley wine, but it's a barley wine plus. And I think as you drink it, especially as it warms up, it's really going to kind of evolve. It's very nice. I'm really happy with it. I think the crew that in the brewery did a great job executing everything. And great.
It's kind of like you get a little of that warmth, almost like that kind of that whiskey warmth, that rum warmth. But you get the kind of oranginess that would be of bitters, right? Like the citrus peel. Yeah,
citrus peel. You get some like herbal notes, but not in a bad way. Just kind of a hint of hops. Not a whole lot of hops in this. The bitterness is there, but it's not tI think too style for a barley wine.
It's nice to meet another member of Team No Sea Malt.
Yeah. Not a big fan of crystal malt. There's a fair amount in Furious, but I think we use it in a way that it doesn't, you don't get that kind of cloying sweetness from Furious. We use enough hops to kind of balance that out.
Yeah.
But wherever possible, I'd like to find the color and flavor from something other than crystal malts if possible.
Exactly, yeah. So this is the Ghost of Surly Anniversary Beer present. I want to talk about Ghosts of Surly Anniversary Beer past. Do you guys have one or two faves from over the years? There have been some really not similar beer, like very unlike each other beers in that portfolio. I'm looking at like the page right now. I was actually like, oh my God, I forgot this one. Like, there's so many. I was actually going to play a game to see if you guys, between the two of you, could name them in either ascending or descending order, but I was like, it's going to take too long. But yeah, do you have a favorite from the 14 years the brewery's been doing this?
It's a great question. It's hard to pick one. I loved 5. That was kind of the first time that Surly used Brad, and this was before I was at Surly. But I remember going to the release party at Blue Nile and trying that beer for the first time, and actually talking to Todd and Omar. And that was just a cool experience. And that beer was unlike anything I'd ever had at that time. I'd had a few Belgian sours and I'd had some other beers, but not anything that was quite that intense. And then that kind of morphed into Pentagram, which is kind of a cool story too, and was at least the inspiration for continuing to dabble in Brett and red wine barrels. So that beer kind of stands out for me. Probably the other one that stands out would be 7, and that's mostly because I started at Surly when we were brewing 7, or right before we started brewing 7. So that was one of the first big anniversary beers that I got to help with as a brewer at Surly, which is a kind of cool thing. And that was a great beer too. And we actually just cracked a bottle of that at the brewery not too long ago, and it's still tasting very good.
Yeah. How's 6 holding up?
Still hot.
Dude, that beer was like, it was, and I was gonna say it might be my favorite because it has such a weird story, and it's also like the release party. I think it maybe Blue Nile as well. I just remember it was like a dare to finish it, and I drank that. I liked it. It was bone dry and like Chardonnay grape, but yeah. It was also like, like the fumes off that mofo.
Yeah.
And, but that's crazy that it hasn't.
It's not as hot as it was, but it's still kind of hot. We poured it. God, what festival was it? It might have been last year's Autumn Brew Review. We might have had one there, but yeah, the flavor is still there. It's mellowed out on the heat, so you actually get more of those flavors you were talking about. But it's still hard to drink more than a little bit. I can't imagine sitting down and drinking a lot of that. I feel like you'd just wake up on the floor the next day. But we actually we had some in barrels, and it didn't really turn out that great. But we actually gave some to Tattersall. They distilled 1 barrel, and the distillate's interesting because it's like takes it to the opposite side where it's all booze, but you can still get those flavors out of it. So I don't know if they're going to do anything with it, but every once in a while we'll just send them something and they have fun playing around with it.
I also really liked 9. 9 was cool.
Yeah.
Imperial smoked Hefeweizen, just so many cool flavors at one time.
That's great.
I was gonna say for me, like 5 was kind of my wife and I were talking about this. 5 was kind of my introductory at the time. We lived in North Minneapolis. We were like 2 minutes from the BC brewery. And that's kind of where I started getting involved and helping out, volunteering, getting in on Darkness Day and Surly Fest, all those things that kind of get your foot in the door. But the biggest one I remember is 8, because much like you said, Ben, 8 was, I think I got that because I started working as a tour guide at first on the weekends, and got a bottle of 8, and that was also coinciding with me coming to work at Surly. So one of my last things at my previous job was cracking this bottle of 8 with my former boss and being like, hey man, it's been awesome. Thank you for the opportunity. Cheers. We'll see you later. And it's got a lot of great memories for me. And that was the oat wine, like with the white wax on it. And I love the art, and it was so full bodied. As weird as it sounded, it tasted like a big bowl of, not necessarily like porridge or oatmeal, but it left you full and satiated after drinking it. Like it was a meal. Like people joke about there's a pork chop in every beer. This was like, yeah, I'm good. Like I've gotten my 4,500 calories for the day drinking this bottle. I'm set.
Yeah, that was a great one too. And that's art by Mr. Josh Lemke, who's a lead brewer for us at Brooklyn Center, which is cool too, because it's cool. All these things connect with different people that, had different roles at the time that came up and now are with Surly and continuing to kind of evolve and grow alongside the company, which is cool.
Yeah, 5 is a dark sour, just for anybody that doesn't know. 8 is a whiskey barrel aged oat wine, which also, like last year around this time, the 12 beers of Christmas we shot basically in one night at a really long party on my front porch. And a friend of ours, Vince Green, brought an 8, and it tasted to the point where I saved the bottle, which I stopped doing years ago. But that bottle is in my garage because I was like, amazing. So Whatever
awesome.
y'all can do to get your boy a bottle of 6, I'd be interested to see. That's the only pandering I'll do. Yeah, the portfolio is sick, right? I mean, I guess maybe let's talk about, and this will be it. We'll talk about Ghost of Surly Anniversary Beer Future. I didn't plan on saying this, but I know you can't, like, I'm not going to give away, but earlier when you were talking about, when we were thinking about 14 blank, what do you kind of like, what's the mission statement with an anniversary beer? Like, what do you want to make sure you're expressing?
You know, for me personally and for Surly as a whole, I mean, when I started, it was actually a question I'd asked Todd Howard, my predecessor, and his kind of thought process was always innovation in process or ingredients. So trying something we haven't done before, trying, new ingredients, new malts, new barrels, and kind of the idea with this beer with 14, kind of innovation came with using barrels more as an actual ingredient and trying to actually blend barrels. We haven't really done a lot of types of barrels and then blending those in for a final beer. And then also kind of, reworking the initial malt recipe to anticipate the effect that those barrels are going to have. So I think we executed great, but there's a lot of question marks when you do that, and potential for some hopefully happy accidents. But I think this one kind of went along as planned. So next year we are thinking about 15 now. I mean, I can tell you that the base beer is in the tank, so I'm not going to tell you what it is yet.
Good for you. That's cool.
But we're going to do some more barrel blending with some different types of barrels. And we're also going to be finishing with some potentially some funky beer as a percentage of the final beer. So it's going to be pretty complex, and it won't be out until I think we're trying to release it in August or September next year. So we've got some time to kind of play with that and continue to monkey around with it. But kind of the initial concept is set, and now we have to kind of connect all the dots and pull it all together between now and then. But so that's exciting. One component is, I'll kind of tease this, we did get more of the Parker Heritage barrels from this next year. So this year is a 10-year bourbon in a heavy char barrel. So those barrels will be part of our next year anniversary beer as well. Cool.
You heard it here first, people.
Ben, if I may, I've tried to keep my head down and stick to my lane, as it were, stay with the whole IT thing as I do. When did 14 start coming around? Do you have stuff in your back pocket and you're like, production or ownership start saying, oh, okay, we need to start coming up with next year's anniversary or 2 years from now anniversary, and you're like, well, I got this, and here's my ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely got a bunch of different ideas just in general for beers, and so when we start talking about concepts, I'll kind of go back to the well. I mean, our team's got a lot of ideas too. It's not just me. I got a lot of inspiration and ideas from the brewing team and also from other folks in the company. But just brand development in general, the way it's been working the last couple of years, it's kind of myself, Will Crosby, VP of Brewing Ops, and then Bill Manley, our VP of Marketing. We kind of sit down every week, or almost every week, just to talk about beers coming down the line, and that's everything from core, variety pack stuff, just general brand calendar beers, and then also special releases, collabs, and what do we want to do next year? And sometimes those are we're looking ahead for a year, sometimes 2 years with some of these specialty projects. So and some of the ideas might be I have an idea, Bill or Will might have something, and we kind of combine the two ideas into a bigger concept. So it's always kind of just brainstorming, throwing stuff at the wall and kind of seeing what sticks and what gets other people excited. Marketing and sales have their goals and their priorities, and they're not always the same as production. So trying to match up that we do have a product that I'm stoked about, and that those guys are going to be stoked, and ultimately consumers going to be stoked about it too, because that you don't want to put out something there that no one's going to buy or drink either. But in terms of 15, I think we started talking about 15 a few months ago. Okay. Kind of grown that concept, and again, it was me bringing up a very kind of straightforward concept, and then the rest of us kind of just kind of throwing stuff on there and see what would make sense and make it more interesting, and something that we could execute as well too.
Sure.
It's triple pentagram, isn't it?
I wish we are releasing Pentagram as our BC small batch in January in cans though.
Oh,
So that's something we've never done before. It's always been in the 750 milliliter bottle. But over the years, we found that other than darkness, everything we put in a bottle is kind of goes on the shelf to die. And we've talked to other people in the industry. That seems to be kind of an industry-wide thing where the big format bottles just don't sell as well as they used to. I was talking to my friend Lauren at New Belgium when we did the New Belgium collab, and they've kind of had the same challenge. So, and the one reason why we started to do the box and the can. So it's still a premium package. It looks cool, but I think people are more willing to spend money on that. I'm not sure why. I don't know the reason behind consumer trends, but we definitely seem to be more successful there. So the ability to bring Pentagram back, so it's one of my favorite beers. I think a lot of people love that beer, and hopefully a package that people will bring home and enjoy. It's great. Also, I think, personally, I'm not going to just open a bottle of Pentagram at home by myself, but I will drink a 16-ounce can.
Right.
So I think the ability to get a 4-pack of that, put it in the fridge and have one, and especially during COVID when you can't have 3 or 4 friends over and just craft bottles, it makes it easier as a single consumer to enjoy it at home.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you think like the whale chasers, as it were, kind of like I can't keep up at this stage in the game with a full bomber, if you will?
Maybe there's also a lot more players out there. I mean, there's so many more breweries. There's almost too many whales now to keep up.
Oh man, we could go down a rabbit hole. Because does tweaking one thing to a whale make another whale? I don't
know.
Fair.
Van chasers. I was gonna say something I can't remember. That's fine because
Sorry, dude.
it's 3:00 in the afternoon on a Saturday. But COVID Saturdays don't count anymore. Well, I know I'm out of juice because the ladies steal half of it. Yeah, this was really fun. Getting 2 people from a brewery together that don't necessarily see each other all the time.
Yeah, definitely.
Kind of interesting. It's almost like blind dates. Like, who are you going to show up? Like, oh God, it's Tracy from HR. Boo! I don't want to share a virtual beer with anybody. Yeah, thanks Ben, thanks Bob. Bob, you're staying on the line, I guess, so we can hang out a little bit longer.
Absolutely.
Ben, you got a exercise bike. I hope this barley wine helps fuel you.
Sure should. I get it put together. The instructions are in some Asian language, so I'll have to figure that out. But
all right, happy anniversary, guys. You guys.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Chip. Thanks, Bob.
Hey Ben, for real, thank you for all you do.
Yeah,
This
thank you,
is
Bob.
good stuff.
Cheers, guys. All right, have fun.
Cheers.
See you later.
Peace. All right, Bob, I'm going to stop recording.
Absolutely.
I feel like, Bob, you've got the color commentary kind of field covered, so we should be in good hands.
I don't know if that's a compliment or if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Hey, you're like the Dan Gladden of the show. It's perfect.
Oh, the Dan Gladden, is that what you said? Oh.
Wait, does that mean I get to pitch in the late innings when the bullpen's empty?
Sure.
Okay, awesome.